Hello everybody, how are you today? I hope that you are doing awesome because today we're going to be doing a very special drone aerial photography and converting it into a panoramic directly in Lightroom without using Photoshop, nothing else, only Lightroom. Hi everybody, I'm Giselle Behrens and welcome to PhotoTVNYC directly from New York City to the world. So if you do like this tutorial, please do remember to go ahead, hit that subscribe button. It does help me and I can continue giving these free tutorials which are awesome because everybody can learn not only Lightroom but photography and also really cool, easy to adjust apps in your cell phone for iOS and as well for Android. Like that video and at the end you will tell me your comments. Just let me know what you guys think, if it was helpful. If you have any other questions, you can always leave it down below in our description and we will make sure to contact us. Today we do have a special guest in form of a photo. I want to give a big thanks to Drone Sky Visuals, who are located in Miami, and Guillermo Wenzel, thank you so much for providing these photos because on this episode of editing your photos, we will be editing the photos of Drone Sky Visuals. Now, Drone Sky Visuals, they specialize in taking aerial photography in Miami, in Florida. So if you guys are, sorry about that, if you guys are interested in having some aerial photography in Miami, they specialize in real estate and making your images look amazing from the sky. Now down back to earth, I'm going to open up my workspace. And in my workspace, you can see that I have completed my panoramic. But for now, we're going to start from scratch. So between the photos that we have selected today, I really appreciated this first one, this second one, and this third one. Now, the problem was that they were in separate images. I really liked how this part of the island looked, but as you can see here on the screen, it was cut over here. And on my third image, I was able to see that we did have some information of that part of the island. So thank you, Drone Sky Visuals, because you did think about taking this photo in advance as a panoramic. And you correctly took the left, center, and right. You can also just do a panoramic with a left one and a right one. But for this one, I did want to include this additional information on the left, which you can see around on that area. Let me just check this out a bit. Actually, double checking my images. Only with these two we can do it. 1 and 2. So this one I did with the 3 of them. Lightroom might have just disregarded the first one. So we're going to just select both of the images over here. And you're going to select both images by pressing your key Shift. If you press your key Shift, you will be able to select multiple images. I'm going to press G, and G is going to bring me to my library module. And you can see over here on the top right. So from my library module, I want to do right-click on the image while both of them are selected, and I'm going to photo merge right over here. And I'm going to select panorama. You can also stack these beforehand. It's your preference. And here is how quickly that panoramic came up on the image. So over here you have different types of merging for your panoramic. I usually like to toggle them and see what happens. If we press perspective, you're going to see that this weird right hand area appears just like very, very distorted. If you press cylindrical, it looks pretty awesome. And spherical, it just crops it a little bit more on the height. So I do want as much image as possible. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave it in cylindrical. And over here, you have your options for auto crop, auto settings, and create a stack. So auto crop is you can just toggle that button. If you don't select auto crop, you're going to have the full image in panoramic, and you can see that you have these white spaces as well. You can manually crop it afterwards. Right now, I'm just going to go with the auto crop. It's still just a crop that is referential. If you do press crop afterwards, all the white space is still going to continue to be there. Auto settings is just going to give you some punch when you do the panoramic. I usually leave them on and then afterwards adjust them if I want to make them different. And I'm just going to create a stack directly from here, and it automatically stacks the images, both images that we used for this particular panoramic. So I'm going to hit the button merge. Just wait a few minutes or a few seconds, and that's going to give us the panoramic that we are waiting for. If you go ahead and press D, it'll take us to our develop module while we wait. It can take several minutes or it can be really quickly. It depends on how big your file size is. So the larger the file size, if you are manipulating raw images, for example, I manipulate them from Sony, and they are around 45 megas each file, then that will take a few more minutes. So here is our awesome panoramic. I'm really happy with the auto crop. And again, you can toggle your R key. If you toggle your R key, that's going to open up the crop. You're going to be able to see that all of this white space continue to stay here. And you can adjust the crop if you'd like. As I mentioned, I'm happy with this crop. I can straighten it out just a little bit because I feel that this part of the horizon is a little bit drooping down on my left side. So I can just press R again and just ever so slightly adjust that. I want to make sure that on my edges I have a nice and clean cut and no white is showing on my cuts. If there is for any reason some white, for example, if I go all the way here and you can see some white over here, you can just easily go back to R and adjust that crop manually. I see that there's a tiny bit of white here, so I'm going to just tiny shift to my right to crop that out. I want to leave as much area over here. If I was being extremely picky, and because I have the information over here that this island is not cut, I would take it to Photoshop and perhaps just transform manually this corner and bring it to the left so I can continue to have this information and not cut that edge. But because we're doing all of this in Lightroom today, I'm just going to crop slightly and just as less crop as I can to pinch in, and here is my panoramic to start working. What I love about this photo is that Drone Sky Visuals made sure to have as much information as possible on all of the photo, meaning that we do have information on the clouds, we have all of the information on the islands and on the water. And that's going to give us a maximum flexibility to adjust this image. If you want to see what format it's taken in, you can always hit your hotkey I. Remember to go back to your original photo, because if you do hit your hotkey I on the panoramic, it's already going to give you either a TIFF or a JPEG because it's compressed and it's already processed by Lightroom. So if we go to our original photo and we let me just unstack this by hitting on the little stack over here. I can open up my stack, go to my original, press my hotkey I, and we can see that the drone that they used took the photo on JPEG. And that is totally fine because it's such a high quality. We have 4,000 by 3,000 pixels. As you've seen on my previous tutorials, if you do use RAW, you do have much more flexibility, but this photo was very correctly exposed, so we have enough information here to make it pop and make it magic. Just toggle twice your I key, and that's going to hide your information that was here on the top left. Now that we are here on our original panoramic, I want to point out that we're on our develop module. We're going to go to our basic tab and start adjusting our exposure. So usually when you do have a correctly exposed image, it might look a little bit too gray, so we want to correct both the blacks and the highlights as well as the brightness of the photo, just to give it that extra punch, because on this photo we are looking to make it have that wow factor. We want his client to be extremely happy and to be thankful, and for everybody to run to Drone Sky Visuals to have some aerial photography in Miami. So I'm going to open up here the brightness and push my exposure on the contrast slider right over here to where I feel that I'm happy. And I think that around here I'm happy. I don't want to push the exposure too much, because or else I'm going to start overexposing my sky, and I want to maintain as much information as I can, so afterwards we can bring out this sky and these clouds and give it that special touch that we're looking for. So we're going to go down now. So we're going to go down now to our highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. Now you can diminish the highlights a little just to bring down the information on the clouds and that pattern. The shadows, I'd also like to bring them down just a little bit to start creating some pop, as well as the blacks. So blacks are the pixels that are completely black in your image, and you can bring them even darker, and the ones that are around, the pixels that are around the black ones, and that's going to give you an extra punch. Now we're doing subtle adjustments because we want to stack subtle adjustments one on top of another, just because these subtle adjustments are going to add, and they're going to give you that pop effect that we're going to have on the photo. If you start doing adjustments that are too drastic, your image is going to start looking very wonky. So now we're going to go to our first tip of the day, which is presence, and it is our dehaze, clarity, and saturation. And it popped right there. Now with dehaze, clarity, and saturation, what we're going to be doing is adding even more contrast, especially on the shadows and the highlights, and giving an extra punch on the midtones. Now that's what's going to happen with that is that it's going to give us an appearance of sharpness in our image. So we're going to start, I always like to start from the bottom to the top with these three, because dehaze is the most sensitive of the three sliders. So while zoomed out, you can start dragging your dehaze slider to the right, and in fact you can just drag it all the way to the right and see what type of effect it is having on the image. These sliders are usually going to have very particular effects on each different image. So if you are adjusting a landscape, if you are adjusting an aerial photography like in this case, and if you are adjusting a portrait, they are going to be affected in different ways. So I invite you to just push it all the way to the right. Don't be afraid to do so, because Lightroom has a non-destructive process. You can always reset it by going back to 0 and double clicking on the word dehaze or whichever adjustment that you're doing. So I'm just going to slide it again subtly where I am happy, and around here I'm happy. I like how the texture on the clouds starts popping out. I'm going to augment my clarity as well. And for my clarity, I want to go in at 100%. Make sure that you're zoomed in 1:1 over here on the top left of Lightroom. And you can just start dragging around just to check out an area that you'd like to see. I like this awesome mansion house. And we're going to just pay attention to this house and see what happens when I augment the clarity. You can see that it starts popping out. If I do reset the clarity, you can see that the whole image starts becoming softer. So I'm going to augment this. And now texture, I'm going to go to my top slider, which is the last of the three, and texture is going to add an additional sharpness to the details. So if we look, for example, at these two palm trees over here, anything that has a lot of contrast that they have edges, dark and light edges, it's going to start giving you this individually sharpened image per element, so you can start seeing how these palm trees start becoming more individual and more sharp. So if you reset it, you can see it's more fuzzy. If you blink, you'll miss it, so take a look at those two palm trees. There it is. It really starts becoming sharper, especially here on this image, because it has so many trees, it has so many windows on the buildings. Now I'm going to zoom out, pressing our hotkey Z, and Z is going to be our hotkey to zoom in and zoom out. I love to use hotkeys because I do have many photos to edit, so the quicker you work on Lightroom, the more photos you're going to be able to edit. So now that I finished with these three, and I'm zoomed out in fit, in my workspace is fit in my window, I'm going to take a look at this image, and you can make it larger by pressing Tab Shift. And Tab Shift is just going to hide all of the tools that you have around, and you're going to be able to take a look at the image as big as possible. Because we did do some adjustments to the dehaze and clarity, the image started becoming a little bit too dark over here. So we can just slightly augment the overall exposure and go back, press Tab Shift one more time, just to expose again our tools. And I'm going to augment it slightly, and around there is good. Now, our second tip of the day is going to be the vignette. So the vignette, we're going to close our basic, and we're going to go down where it says Effect. And we're going to look for the slider, the first slider under Post Cropping Vignetting, and it's called Amount. So on this slider, we're going to slide it very slowly to the left, and we're going to see how the edges start becoming darker, and our attention starts shifting towards the center of this panoramic, which is around here, because we want to trap our viewer's eye into seeing our main focal point. And our main focal point for this photo would be the island. Our secondary focal point for the photo would be this amazing skyline over here of Miami. So I want to make sure that our viewer has a play in their eye between bouncing back and forth between the island to the city to the island again. And we're going to do that by burning or just darkening all around the area. And this is a great adjustment where we can do vignetting because it does it automatically. And again, you want to do subtle adjustments. If you do go all the way with the vignetting, you're going to start having this antique looking photo, and we definitely don't want this on this modern and awesome photo taken by Dural Sky Visuals. There we go. Now that I'm happy with this effect, I'm going to jump back to basic because I'm noticing that my colors are a little bit muted off. And we're going to augment the saturation on these colors just to make it pop. Because right now it's too monochromatic for me. I want to give it that wow effect. I wanted to give it that drama, but that pop effect as well. So we're going to go on our basic tab all the way down to vibrance and saturation. And we're going to slide our vibrance up. Vibrance is going to give you additional saturation on the colors that are already saturated in your image. And saturation is going to give you an augmented saturation on 100% of your pixels. So I usually like to do a play of both and see just what happens. You can always go back to 0 if you'd like. For example, I'm going to just go a little bit more to the left with vibrance because my skies really started becoming very cool, very warm, and my bottom part of the image is very green. So now that I have this done, I'm happy with these two values, 10 for vibrance and 33 for saturation. I absolutely love how these red rooftops are starting to pop out and make a color contrast between the dark green. So I'm going to close my basic up and continue with my color adjustments. I'm going to go to my tab of HSL. I love using HSL, which is hue, saturation, and luminance, because you're going to have a way to do selective adjustments based on colors. So for example, I'm going to go to my saturation and just slightly augment this very bright red so it pops out more. And I'm going to go to my luminance. I'm going to grab my little tool. This tool is going to select for you the specific colors of an area that you want. So you turn it on just by clicking on it and making sure that it's bright white. When it is bright white, you can make sure that it's turned on because your cursor starts becoming the little circle with the arrow going up and the arrow going down, and then a little air on top of that, and this little air you're going to use to select the color that you want. I'm just going to zoom in with my Z, and right now the adjustment that I'm trying to do, I want these trees to become a little bit brighter because I feel that they are very, very dark because of all of the adjustments that we did. So I'm going to go to this area. You can select any area where there's a tree or where you have your darker areas and just augment it up and see what starts happening if there are any adjustments. These adjustments are so subtle that we do want to turn them on enough to see what's going on, because once we blink, we won't see them. However, if you go over here to our sliders, we can see that Lightroom, with the 3 adjustments that I did, dragged up a little bit the yellow to 17, a whole lot on the greens, a lot on the aquas and the blues as well. So if I were to do this adjustment manually, I would have only selected green and I wouldn't have known that there was blue and aqua as well. So I'm going to zoom out. You can toggle this button on and off just to see the adjustments. And now that I'm zoomed out, I want to take a look at the whole image and see how this adjustment affected the image. So I'm going to toggle it on and off. Attention please on the photo on your screen. Off and on. Now because we were zoomed in, the adjustments on the island look very good, but look what started happening all around, especially because we are working with JPEGs, this image, and if we were working with RAW, this probably would have happened as well, because you never want to do an adjustment as drastic as this unless that's the look that you're going for, because your photo, and I'm going to press zoom and drag it to the ceiling, is going to start to degrade. Your pixels are going to start to look very strange and very pixelated, and artifacts are going to start coming out. So I'm just going to reset the luminance over here by double clicking on the word, and I'm going to do the adjustments one more time, zoomed out. And this time I'm going to make sure that my adjustments don't go too far out, and I can manually just adjust this and tweak it around to make sure that I am where I want to be. And I think that around there is good. I'm going to toggle on and off to see the sort of effect that it had. It did have it, but it's very subtle. So we're going to go into our third tip of the day, which are masks. Now masks, there's 2 types of masks that you can use on Lightroom. You can use your linear and radial masks, or you can use your paintbrush mask. we're going to use both for this photo. So if you go ahead and press your M, that's going to take you directly to the masks. You're going to double click on the word effect to make sure that all of your sliders are resetted down. And the first effect that I want to do is that this sky is just too blue. So I want to make it a little bit more dramatic, have a little bit more punch, and make it warmer. So I'm going to drag from the top to the bottom my masking tool, and right now I'm using a linear masking tool. I want to make sure that these spaces in my mask are pretty big because I want to feather it. You can toggle your O button, and that O button is going to pop up your mask. It's going to pop up a pink mask, and the pink mask is very helpful because it's going to be indicating you what pixels you are actually adjusting in the photo. So I'm going to toggle it back off by pressing O again, and I'm going to diminish my exposure just a little. I'm going to go to my temperature. My white balance temperature is going to make the image warmer, more yellow. So I'm going to drag it to the right and ever so slightly because I don't want it to become too green. So I'm going to leave it at around 2. This adjustment is very sensible. If you do go higher up, you're going to see how the yellow really starts affecting the image. So I'm going to leave it at around 2 or 3. Right there is good. And I'm going to go to dehaze and just augment this very, very slightly at around 7 is good, and my clarity as well. Now if we zoom in, we're going to start seeing some noise coming up. So we can go to our noise slider and just start smoothing this noise out because we do want to have a nice and smooth image for this look. Zoom back out. I want to play and see what happens if I do diminish some saturation as well. The fun part about Lightroom is that you can just play around and see what happens. If I am looking for a more neutral sky, like I am right now, the saturation tab was a great way to diminish the coolness of the sky. I'm going to see what happens if I add one more point to 4, and I think that here I'm happy with the white balance on the top part of the image. And again, this was made by using the masks. So now that I'm happy with the top part of my image, I'm going to press M again, and now I'm going to press K, and K is going to bring us directly to our paintbrush tool. You can also press this icon over here, which is the paintbrush, but if you start practicing your hotkeys, that's going to give you a quicker workflow, which is ideal. So double click on the word effect just to make sure that all of the sliders are resetted down. And right now, I'm going to open up or dodge my island. So I'm going to go to my exposure at around 1, just starting at 1. You can make your brush larger just by pressing your right bracket, and it's that button that popped up on your screen, and you can make it smaller by pressing your left bracket. So on this case, I do want my brush a little bit larger, and I'm going to go to my flow just to make sure that I have a nice and low flow. I have it at around 11. I can perhaps bring it up to 15 and start painting in. Just start painting in. These effects are going to be very, very soft effects. So because I have a flow of 14, you can just start painting and it's going to very slowly start painting in. I'm going to delete it just so you guys can see the before and after. And you can see that there's a very subtle adjustment in the brightness on this area. You can toggle your O button and see where you painted in, just so you don't get lost in the process, which always happens to me. That's why I'm always checking my O's and my mask. Or you can also just slide that exposure all the way to the right and see what area of the photo is being affected. So I'm going to reset it. I'm going to go again between 1. I think I'm going to go and I'm going to push it more towards 2. And I think that here I'm good. I also want this area to be nice and sharp. because it is my main focal point. So I'm going to go to clarity and texture and just add a little bit on that area to make it really pop out. And I'm going to augment my saturation only in this area as well. So if I delete this mask, I want you to take a look at this area on the island and see the before and after of the mask that we just created. Right there, I'm going to do Command or Control Z, and that makes such a difference. It's such a subtle adjustment, but these subtle adjustments are the secret into making your photo pop. There's one more adjustment I'm going to do, and it is on my second main focal area, which is this skyline. I think it's so beautiful, but I want to make it pop out more. And I'm going to go ahead and in my same paintbrush tab, I'm going to click on New and double click on the word effect because I don't want any adjustments active. So right now what I'm going to do, I'm going to augment my exposure just a little bit and I am going to add warmth on my temperature. So I'm going to paint this in over here, augment a little bit more of the exposure, and add dehaze. Dehaze is going to give me that contrast, which is going to really make it pop. I feel that they are a little bit too blue. Buildings do tend to go blue because of the material that they're constructed in. So you always want to make sure that you have a white balance, and keep in mind that you can do it a selective white balance to correct those blues and those warmths that may appear on your image. And I think that around here I'm good. I'm going to augment my clarity and texture as well. Just zoom in to see and to make sure what's happening with my hotkey Z. You can drag by leaving your spacebar button pressed and your hand is going to appear. So let's see the before and the after. You can do your before and after by toggling your backslash button, and it's right this one that appears. So the larger the image, the more it's going to take to render that preview. That's why I have it actually just saved over here so we can start seeing our before. So this is our image before, which is an awesome image because it has all of the information we want. It's just not processed yet. It's not edited yet by us, the photographers that are going to give it that special touch to make it pop out. We as photographers are in charge of 100% of the pixels of a photo that we share. So we want to make sure that we are sharing our vision when we took the photo, our vision that we want to tell, the story of the place that we took the photo as we are telling it right now. And our story in this case is how amazing this aerial photography is with drone sky visuals, because now we can take a look at Miami from above and have a play between our buildings and downtown over here and this amazing island that is right here. So I'm going to do a little bonus selective adjustment still in my brush, in my paintbrush tab. I'm going to do new. I'm going to double click on the word effect, and I'm going to add a little bit of color just to give it a little bit of warmth on this area, as if it was the time was a little bit closer more to sunset rather than to perhaps noon. Noon is going to give you this blue and a little bit cool tint to your images, and that's the white balance that we usually get, nice and crisp. So if we are closer to the sunset, we're going to have a little bit more warmth. So I'm going to select my color. I want to add a little bit of pink. All my other adjustments are resetted down, and I'm just going to paint in a little bit of pink. So subtle. Because my flow is very low and that's what I want, it's going to take me a little bit to paint it in over here and over here. If you do go overboard, you can always press your Option key, and that's going to bring your negative paintbrush, which means that you can start erasing a little bit. And it's just this tiny touch. I'm going to delete it. Take a look at this area so you can see the before and after. And that tiny adjustment completed my photo edits with this amazing panoramic photography that Drone Sky Visuals did. This is not a sponsored tutorial. This is just something that I admire so much from Drone Sky Visuals. And I was so happy that they were able to provide us with these photos just to show everybody how to do a panoramic directly in Lightroom without having to jump over to Photoshop and clean it, make it look amazing, make it look sharp, give it that special touch of the warmth. If you guys have any questions, you can always leave them down below in the comments. Guillermo Wenzel says, "Hi Giselle, awesome, doing her magic, doing my magic with your magic." This is the beauty of community. We're going to be helping one another and just seeing what we can create together. So thanks everybody, leaving you with the before and after slideshow right on your screen. You can see it right there. And their webpage, by the way, is droneskyvisuals.com. And if you are interested, you can just go to their webpage and hit on the contact button, and that's going to take you directly for Miami, Florida. Do remember to subscribe to this channel. It really helps me out because these tutorials are for free and for the community to learn and share creatively what they are doing, how they're applying their photos, especially in this tough time that we're all living. So we want to be here for you guys. Any questions, leave them in the descriptions. Bye, have a nice and photographic day. Thanks everybody. See you at 3 p.m.